All right, so first lesson. Today we're going to talk about positive and negative numbers. So what is a positive number? Positive number is basically any number that's greater than 0. So 1, 2, 3, 5,000, 6,000, 8 billion, 1/2, 3/4. These are all positive numbers because they're all greater than 0. A negative number is a number that's less than 0. -1, -2, -15, -37, -7,852, -3/4, -1/2. These are all smaller than 0. And we know that it's smaller than 0 because it's all to the left of 0. Okay, notice that on this number line, here I have 0 right here, and everything to the left of 0 is all negative numbers. And on the right of 0 is all positive numbers. Okay? Opposite numbers. So opposite numbers are numbers that have the same distance from 0. Okay? They're the same distance away from 0. They're on opposite sides of 0 on the number line. So here I've got -3, which is a distance of 3 away from 0 to the left. And then I have +3, which is also 3 away from 0, but this time on the right. Okay, notice 3 away from the left, we're at -3, and the opposite of -3 is +3. The opposite of -4, which is 4 away from 0, is +4, which is also 4 away from 0. Now these distances that we're talking about, when I refer to the distance of a number from 0, I'm talking about the absolute value. Okay? So the absolute value of a number is going to be given this way. The absolute value of a number. If I want to do the absolute value, I use this symbol. And I just have a number inside. Okay? So if I want the absolute value of 7, this is telling me what is the distance from 0. Well, how far away is 7 from 0? It's 7. Well, let's look at the absolute value of -7. How far away is -7 from 0? Well, it's 7 spaces. So the absolute value of something is always positive. It's always positive because we can't have a negative distance. Think about it. How far are two cities away from each other? If you tell me they're 100 miles away, does it matter whether I'm going to or from? No. It's not going to be negative going one direction and positive going the other direction. It's always going to be positive. Okay? If I say how far is that city from this city and you tell me it's 100 miles, I know it's a positive distance. There's no such thing as a negative distance. How do I drive -1,000 or 100 miles? I can't. There's no way to drive -100 miles. So all distances and measurements are always going to be positive. Okay? They're always positive. Now, integers. This is a big one because this is what this unit's about. Integers are all of the whole numbers and all of their opposites on the negative number line, including 0. Okay? So an integer is basically any whole number, whether it's positive or negative. Positive 18, that's an integer. because it's a whole number. Negative 17, also a whole number. It's an integer. Negative 3 halves. Is 3 halves a whole number? No, 3 halves is not a whole number. So 3 halves is not an integer. Okay? It has to be a whole number. It has to be a whole number. If it's not a whole number, it is not an integer. And in this case, we also include 0. So any whole number, including 0, is an integer. Here's a hint. I do not need to write positive numbers with a plus sign in front of them. Okay? If there's nothing in front of it, we should already know that it's positive. So if I just say 9, 9 is a positive number. The only distinction I'm going to have is by putting a negative in front of a number. Positive numbers don't need anything. You've been dealing with positive numbers your whole life. Okay? If we do 2 plus 3, we know that we're adding positive 2 and positive 3. If there's no negative symbol in front of it, it has to be positive. I don't need this plus sign. But again, it's not wrong to write it this way. And finally, rational numbers. Now I'm going to read this definition and we're going to talk about what this means. A rational number is a number that can be expressed as one integer, that we're going to call a, divided by another integer that we're going to call b, where b is not 0. Now, you can write a rational number in the form of a over b or in decimal form. So you're looking at me going, huh? What does that mean? What does this say? What is a over b nonsense? Well, if you bear with me and we clear this out, a rational number, okay? So a rational number, and I like doing shorthand for number. A rational number is any number that can be written or expressed as a fraction. Okay? It's any number that can be expressed as a fraction. So, for example, 3 halves. It's a rational number. I can write it as a fraction. 0.75. This is the same thing as 3/4. This can be written as a fraction. So this is rational because this is rational. Okay, they're the same thing. 0 is rational. 15 is rational. Negative 312 is rational. So, now you're going to be sitting there thinking to yourselves, what is not rational? What is not rational? Or, in other words, what is an irrational number? That would be the opposite of a rational number. So if a rational number can be expressed as a fraction, what do we know about an irrational number? What do we know about an irrational number? An irrational number is a number that cannot be expressed as a fraction. Okay? So an irrational number is a number that cannot be expressed as a fraction. So for example, the square root of 2. If you take a calculator and you figure out what the square root of 2 is, it's going to give you this giant non-repeating decimal. Okay, it's going to give you a giant non-repeating decimal. And because it's non-repeating and it doesn't have a pattern that it can really follow, there is no way, since it goes on forever, that I can express this as a fraction. Another well-known irrational number is pi. We know pi is 3.14 blah blah blah. Okay? The problem is all these numbers that go on forever cannot be expressed. This whole number of pi, this 3.1415, etc., cannot be expressed as a fraction. There is no way for me to write out pi as a fraction. So this is an irrational number.